Hello and welcome back to episode 5 of the Second Take podcast. And as you can see, we do have a very special guest for this 5th episode milestone, Coach Nick, or more commonly known as BBall Breakdown. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
That's great. All right, so we're going to start today's episode by kind of starting off with kind of an interview sort of thing because we want to know more about you personally. For those watching who aren't familiar with your channel quite yet, can you give everyone like a quick overview of what you do on your channel and why you enjoy it so much?
Sure. Well, BBall Breakdown is the YouTube channel, and it started out as me having a coaching background in basketball, just sort of breaking down plays and explaining what's really happening on the court. And I think it was motivated because a lot of the times when you were watching the TV or ESPN or whoever was breaking stuff down, there was no interaction. So whatever they told you was happening, you had to sort of accept. And so what happened, I think, is that I was able to create this thing where I'm arrows and diagrams and explaining what really is happening, which tended to fly in the face of what they were saying on TV. And that seemed to strike a chord with people. And then I would respond to people's comments and everything. And that was another sort of level of interaction that wasn't really going on, and especially back then in 2010, 2011. So that's what quickly kind of made the thing popular. And if you I'm sort of the I guess the channel of record for when you want to know like what their teams are running, why they're getting scored on, or what's not working, why this player is a better shooter than somebody else, or a better defender, everything like that. So anything basketball, anything fundamentals, anything functional movement, and that kind of thing, I try and cover. And it's what's not to like. I get a chance to interact with coaches from all levels all the way across the world and learn so much from everybody. In particularly like, the high school level. Some of the best coaches in the world are at the high school level, toiling away in obscurity.
Definitely. Something I found like so interesting from watching your videos is just the really coaching takes you take on things. And it's not like a player's take, which is looking at more of like the records and things like that. Like you really look at what gets buckets and like why a team is playing how they are. And so this is kind of like a break from the interview thing, but a question I have for you is if you could put together like a 5-player starting 5 for your bubble right now, this is really on the spot, but what would you say is 5 of your favorite players right now?
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, the favorite players I have are the ones like, I like Fred VanVleet. He's unheralded, I don't even think he got drafted. So I love that underdog story. And when the guys like that who are also physically at a disadvantage in theory because of their smaller, for instance, like I love that when they can do so well. Kyle Lowry would almost be that guy too, but I like Fred VanVleet more for some reason. So he would probably be there. Passing is another big one of mine. I love when people exist to pass. So Luka would have to be on there. That's a nice little backcourt. Jokic would probably be, in the front court with maybe like Marc Gasol coming off the bench because of that. But there's a lot of actually some good big man passers now. And let's see here. Who's left? It's too obvious, I would say, to go Kawhi. I like guys. Who I like is like a guy like Montrezl Harrell. Maybe because he's kind of scary to me, and I would never know how to instill that kind of meanness in a player. I think you just have to have that, and he's got it. And so I would respect that, and I would always. That's the kind of guy I would like to have on my team. Like Patrick Beverley too, in a way. Now the funny thing is, I wouldn't want to have a guy like, like Eric Bledsoe drives me nuts. Because he's the kind of guy who makes really like sort of poor decisions, and and it's like, why did you just throw that ball and it gets thrown away, or terrible shots? But there's somebody else though who I know who really hustles and people love, and I just can't. He drives me nuts because his offensive skill is too low. I'll think of him in a second. So, but I really like skill. I like you need at that level. There's no excuse to not have really good ball handling skills. There really isn't much of an excuse to not shoot decently. And so let's go back to the end of the question. So it was Jokic, Fred VanVleet, Luka, which is obvious, but still, he's just exceptional. And that's I guess 2 other people. Who else am I thinking of? Who I just described generally. What would that mean? Let me think here. What do you guys think?
You mentioned Trez
Oh yeah, okay. We'll throw him on there. Again, he doesn't shoot, right? And that would be a thing, but man, is he tough. And he actually is scoring, 20 a game without having to do that. It's amazing.
His motor's wild.
Yeah. I'm just going to check the standings here so I remember who I'm talking about. Gosh, I don't know. I kind of like Jaylen Brown. I like him better than Jason Tatum, and it's weird. I don't know why, but I do because the numbers don't really bear that out. But, I like him as well. It's just the way he moves. He's so explosive, and he can really make plays that other people can't. Let's see here. I think that might be it. Let's see here. Does that count? I mean, it's 4, but let me see. I mean, listen, I've got to throw somebody else. I'm looking for like a forward, I think. Who's a forward I really like? You know who I would like is Duncan Robinson or like Tyler Hero. I like the whole Heat team.
Yeah.
The way they move off the ball, the way they just stroke the ball from 3 is crazy. It's amazing. And no matter how tough they're guarded. In fact, I think Duncan Robinson might have a higher 3-point percentage well guarded than he does when he's open. So something like that. I like that kind of guy who's a little bit bigger, marksman. And by the way, the marksmen now shoot off the dribble. Like back in my day, you were just a catch and shoot guy, and now these guys can do it off the dribble too. So, those are the kind of players I really like. They're immense skill. They're not ruffled by pressure, and they're really consistent. That's the best thing I think a coach wants is you want to know what you're going to get from night to night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Duncan Robinson, just looking from a percentage wise, I was seeing something. I think he might have the best percentage since 15 Steph Curry. But since 16, so it is fair to say he might be the best 3-point shooter in the game right now, or at least the bubble.
For sure. And, and then you got Davis Bertans, who's also was doing it last year as well. And I think a little bit this year. We're going to see a 50% 3-point shooter on high volume. We've seen it before in the past on 2 or 3 threes a game, but we're going to see somebody take 6 threes a game, shoot 50%. In fact, can we swear in this podcast?
Yeah.
All right. I took so much shit for tweeting in the beginning of the year that Landry Shamet was going to do it because I saw the quality of shots that he was going to get when he was starting alongside Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It's a no-brainer. And you wouldn't believe everyone freaked out. First of all, people would freak out at me because they had no idea anyone had ever done it before. And Kyle Korver, Steve Kerr, I don't know if Nash did it, but it had happened a few times. But, the dude, Landry Shamet shot 45% from 3 the year before without those two guys with the Clippers in about 25 games, which is a pretty big sample size in my mind. And it turns out if you isolate him on the court with Kawhi and Paul George this year, that didn't happen a lot because Paul George was hurt and then Kawhi gets load management and then Landry Shamet kind of got in the doghouse for a while. But when those 3 are together, Shamet shot 55% from 3. So, and if you watch in the playoffs now, just watch the quality. They're just wide open catch and shoots. No doubt in my mind, a guy like that could get to 50% easy. Because even if he's not playing with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard all the time, if he's shooting 55 with them for most of his minutes, then he shoots 45, let's say, with the other people, that gets close to 50. So I think someone's going to do it. It's probably going to be Duncan Robinson or one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So talking basketball or talking sports has always kind of been an interest to all of us, I guess. So how did you really get your start? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit with you being an ex-coach and you getting on YouTube kind of breaking down plays, but what really made you think hey, maybe I can do this YouTube thing?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, I think in 2010, when I started, I had a friend of mine who was a consultant or a manager of, the YouTube stars. And back then it was like Roy Williams Johnson. I don't know if that's the guy's name. Shay Carl, that guy. It was screwing around on the camera, handheld, didn't look good, didn't sound good, but they were making 6 figures a year doing this thing. And so he's like, let's reverse engineer what we learned from them. And we can, actually do it on purpose for your channel. So it took me a while to kind of figure out what that channel would be. And when I looked around, it was I had a lot of editing experience because I had a company where I was doing sort of high-end event videos and commercials, editing. So I had all this editing skill. And I had been coaching. I coached at Birmingham High School, actually, not far from where you guys go to high school. And So I had been an assistant there. I had taught there. So I was like, well, when you watch TV and you see what they say, a lot of it's wrong. I could definitely add to that and maybe, correct some of these things and help educate. So that's kind of where it started. And when I started it in May, and then in August, I actually took over the head coaching job at Birmingham. So I was doing both of those things for the first 3 years. It was kind of hard by the end there to kind of manage both. And so the day I stopped coaching was the day that BBall Breakdown blew up, because I finally just said, I'm going to do this full time. And so, that's kind of how it started. And, I was a basketball manager in Wisconsin when I went to college. And so I learned a ton there from Stu Jackson, was the head coach, who you guys might be too young to remember, but he was the number 2 guy in the NBA, handing out all the fines and suspensions. So like back in the Malice at the Palace, you guys remember that one, the big fight? Like he was the guy who had to go through and figure out who was going to be in trouble or not. And then there was another big one when the Spurs and the Suns played a little bit in like 07, 08. The Suns should have gotten to the finals, but 2 of their players came off the bench. Anyway, Stu Jackson, my coach at the time, my boss at the time, was like had to deal with all that. So point being was that I learned a lot from him. Stan Van Gundy was an assistant on that team. And Sean Miller at Arizona was another assistant. So I just got a chance to be in that environment for a couple of years and really just soak it all up. And that really helped. And then in my first stint as an assistant at Birmingham, the head coach there was a mentor of mine and a good friend. So, I got a chance to really learn a lot from that. And then I was always a student of the game. I was always studying and reading and getting VHS tapes of whatever I can back then to learn. And all of a sudden, all those things mixed together, and YouTube came along, which is another thing, which, had it not come along, then I would never had a chance to do this. And, my only choice would have been to work for either ESPN or to, maybe get hired by the local, Spectrum Sports Net, whatever thing. And there's a very finite amount of jobs are there. And now it's like, would I really want to have a corporate conglomeration having to sit on my shoulders and force me to do what they want me to do? Like, I don't think so. So it's worked out pretty well.
Well, like you kind of also touched on this a little bit. When I just watched your video today, I believe, the Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. You broke down literally every single move that they did and why it was so effective. And I guess, so did you ever have any experience, because it sounds like you're speaking from a player's perspective or a very, very specific coach. So do you have any history either playing? I mean, you did say you coached at Birmingham, but do you have any experience playing or training?
Yeah, I played, so, and certainly as a manager at Wisconsin, I could play in those pickup games with, Michael Finley was on that team. So I was in a couple pickup games with him, and I could hang, in a pickup game in the summer when it wasn't full on, but I could hang, and I was a really good shooter, so I could really just shoot the ball. But I think the motivation I have for coaching is because it was much harder for me to learn all this stuff. There just wasn't information out there, and had it existed, I would have been a lot better. So I was going to play Division III until I visited Wisconsin and fell in love, and I just went there and became a manager and did all that. So I honestly believe if I had better coaching and more information when I was in 9th grade, I would have had a much more legitimate shot at actually playing Division I. We just know so much. It was a dark age back in the 80s, without question, and for decades. And anybody who was able to break out of that was almost like it was so special, and no one really looked at frame by frame with the HD. We didn't have it to figure out, well, what are they doing? So this notion of reverse engineering what the best players are doing and then teaching that was really pushed a very hard concept to be able to use in basketball. Now in tennis, that's all they do. They study Federer, they study McEnroe, they do all these things, and then they'll teach it to the lower people because that makes sense. Basketball finally is getting to that point, but for a long, long time, it's like, no. Steph Curry shoots that way. No one else can do that. You can't teach that. And it turns out, yeah, you can. And now I got 10-year-olds I'm training that can shoot 19'9" 3-pointers, and they're not throwing it. They're shooting it like a regular jump shot. And so we can really unlock a lot of the full potential of these players now. And that's the motivation, is because no one helped me unlock it, and I never really reached that potential. And that's why it's frustrating. But the other thing is through BBall Breakdown, I get a chance to meet all the trainers. I get to go observe and study what they're doing with their NBA guys. And that's a really helpful thing because those guys are on the cutting edge as well. And so, you amass all this information, and then you can now, help people to understand a little bit more about how that works.
All right, nice. Well, watching your videos, you're pretty non-biased. Like you don't really like. I think if I were making something like this, I would kind of just go towards my favorite players all the time. But who do you actually support in the NBA as a team, and why? And what's been your favorite moment while watching them?
Yeah, well, obviously, like the Warriors, when the way they played, I mean, I would think most coaches would really enjoy watching ball movement. Maybe less at the end of the KD years, but certainly, if you think about teams like the 2014 Spurs, right, that's really something exciting to see. The ball movement, the sharing of the ball, fantastic team defense, all those things. Just teammates that care about each other and are actually enjoying the game and have the joy of the game, which is really important to guys like Steve Kerr. And you see it on the court. So, I don't really have I don't want to say a favorite. And I appreciate you thinking that I am unbiased because, man, do I get accused of being biased all the time. But the funny thing is, like on Twitter, if I'm doing an analysis and I do the little video clips really quickly during the games, a lot of times I might point out something that happened bad to a team or a player and the people freak out about that. And I'm like, just wait. I'm sure I'm going to find something really good to show in a second from that same team, that same player. And then a lot of times the response is, well, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? I don't care if they made that mistake then, and it doesn't really affect that they didn't make it. They made a great move the next time. That's great, and we're gonna and it's not like a running tally, and I don't know what's gonna happen ahead of time, so I can, eliminate whatever these negative or positive things are. So it's been a really interesting thing. Now I get less of that more and more now, and I also think that my channel, it's not a highlight channel. This is not highlights, right? If you want highlights, go to ESPN and go to NBA's channel, right? I'm actually giving analysis. And so I think it took a while for people to really understand that that's what this was, because I think for a little while there, and I probably also changed. I might have been negative a lot more in the beginning, just pointing out the mistakes. And I realized that it's a lot better. By the way, as a coach, it's a lot better too. You don't want to just do that. And so it's a lot better when you kind of mix the highlights with the with things that could be corrected. And now I've gotten a pretty happy medium, I feel like, where people can enjoy it and realize that, I'm not just shitting on everybody, but I'm also fair and balanced. And that's the challenge.
All right. Another kind of on the spot question. It's very simple. Who do you have in the championship? I know I've asked everyone else here, but.
Sure. Well, I'm actually interested to hear what you guys think, but I'll answer first. Well, you know what? You tell me. Who do you think?
Personally, I think Lakers Bucks. I did have Lakers 76ers, but that was pre-Simmons. Lakers Bucks. I think the Lakers have the best player in the world. I think that the Clippers, they did show despite them being the fifth best defensive team according to their efficiency rating, the Mavericks kind of exposed them. I know the Mavericks have an historically good offense, but I think that Clippers defense might not be as good as people may say. And then obviously Paul George had a great game last game with 35, but he has been inconsistent. So I think that's why it's going to be Lakers Bucks.
All right. What about you guys are too quiet. What about you guys?
I'll go. I mean, I guess I am a Clippers fan, but I think the Clippers they're the deepest team, and just watching them, like the game they played last game, even though they just overwhelmed the Mavs with just player after player, and even missing Patrick Beverley, they kind of adjusted. I'm more of a casual basketball fan, but I noticed they adjusted their defense against Luka, where they started to trap him, because especially not having Patrick Beverley. But I feel like when they have Patrick Beverley to guard, they didn't have any guard defense, and so they just tried to man up Luka, and then every time they'd switch with Kawhi, and it just was not working. Like Reggie Jackson just could not guard Luka. But I think, especially with Kristaps out, I think the Clippers can get them the next game. But I don't know. We'll see. I think the worst matchup for the Clippers, I think they match up well against the Lakers and the Bucks if they can make it there. But I don't think they match up well with a team like the Rockets, just because I want to see how their guard defense plays out. But I think I have the Clippers. Okay. And actually I have the Clippers and the Raptors in the final.
Oh, all right. I like where you're going with that. All right. What about you, Asher?
So I think that East Coast, I have faith that the Bucks will take it. Me and Max were sort of thinking Sixers from pre-Simmons, just because on book they look so good, but they are inexperienced, and then all of, everything that just happened. And So I think the West, at this very second, I'm saying Lakers. But I want to see one more game of the Clippers. If they can hold up with Paul George being consistent, and I think that if Paul George is there, the morale just changes drastically. And I think that means incorporating guys like Shamet, guys like Reggie Jackson more. And I just think if the Clippers show up one more game, then I have the Clippers for sure. Because I think the Clippers can beat the Lakers when they show up.
I've been adamant that the Clippers were going to make the finals, no question, all season long. But, you have some pause when you saw how they were playing in that first round. But then again, the point is that this is a historically great offense. It really is. Mm-hmm. Luka is really – I said this in my podcast myself. I think that Luka could go down as the greatest of all time. I think he could average 30, 10, and 10 for 14 straight years. And while it's not always fair to just go by the numbers, nobody has ever come anywhere close to doing anything like that. And I don't see why he wouldn't do that and get better. He's 21 years old. He'll get better. So if he does that and stays healthy, it's like, how could you argue, and obviously he's going to have to win probably 6 titles, right, to match Michael before he gets that crown. But if I had to pick, I guess, you'd say the Lakers might be playing a little bit better now, but I still don't understand, like, who's the Lakers' 4th best player? And when you get there and you look at that, you're like, that's not a championship team. It's not. There's no way that, Alex Caruso could be your 4th best player and you win a title, even though I love it. Okay, Alex Caruso is the guy who I love. I didn't really even think he was an NBA player. I really wasn't sold on him up until about, I think, last year. In the middle of last year, I was like, you know what? Okay, he can play. Now, he can really play well, too, when he's got Anthony Davis and LeBron on his team, too. It really helps him, whereas maybe on, like, the Timberwolves, he might not have been as good, but he makes plays. He plays defense. He can set people up. He shoots okay. I could help him with his jump shot, actually, because his rhythm is off. But the point being that when you look at the Clippers roster, it's like it's no brainer. Their 4th through 8th is so much better than the Lakers' 4th through 8th. It's like I just don't see how the Lakers could overcome that. LeBron has to sit down and rest a little bit, and that's when the Clippers should kill him. And then on the other side, I'm a Raptors guy. I'll ride and die for the Raptors because they're so well coached. They play so well together. The Bucks, the Bledsoe issue is an issue. And I think the Giannis thing is an issue. I think, when you play Giannis in a 7-game series, there's ways to stop him and mitigate his effect. Even if he might get the 30 points, it's not going to be the thing that beats you. So that's why I have grave misgivings about the Bucks. So I'm going with the Raptors, and I still go with the Clippers. I think they have too much, and I think they're going to figure some things out and get going. I know Paul George. I'm convinced he will figure it out and get himself right and get more consistent. They don't need him to be an all-star, really. They just need him to be like 17 points, maybe 5 assists. You know what I mean? Something solid, but certainly not what he was 2 for 15 or whatever he was. The Sixers, by the way, I don't think that pairing of Embiid and Simmons will ever win a title. I think that's not a good pairing. Although it sounds stupid because they were 3 bounces on the rim away from beating the Raptors, and then they probably could have gotten the finals last year, and they probably would have won, right? Yeah. And that changes everything. But I just don't think that pairing works. And they fired Brett Brown, right? He's already fired. Yeah, and that was a long time coming. I'm sure he's a great guy. But he didn't coach well enough.
I hear they're thinking about hiring Tyronn Lue now.
I don't like that hire. I mean, maybe it's just because I was under the influence of LeBron coaching in Cleveland, but I think Tyronn Lue, he just was not an adequate coach at all. I think LeBron kind of just pushed him around, and I don't think a young team like Philly, especially if you do keep Simmons and Embiid, I don't see how he can manage that locker room or even them on the court.
Yeah. I'm not sure anybody could. Maybe like Popovich or something like that, maybe, but maybe not. Because Popovich would have the benefit generally of they'd be drafted and he'd already be there. So when a coach comes into the situation, that's really, really hard. It's kind of like the Russell Westbrook thing where, when they brought in Billy Donovan, I did a video on that earlier where, Billy Donovan did not look like a good coach. And then finally Russ leaves and KD leaves. And he has his own team, and they play just like they would have played at Florida, which is so much better because he now has a little bit more control, and it's just sort of the nature of the roster being what it was. So yeah, it's an interesting situation where, you know, I don't know. I guess I'll reserve judgment on Ty Lue until I see him in another situation. But there were moments when I was like, oh, okay. And then there were moments where it's like, well, who is coaching this team? Is it LeBron or is it him? So I'm definitely waffling until I see something else. I won't completely, you know, naysay. Like I would naysay against like Mark Jackson and say, please don't, you know, no one should hire him. I don't think. But Ty Lue probably will. I'm sure he's going to get a shot at one of these jobs. And we'll have to see.
I have a question about the Sixers also, because do you see their biggest issue as just like pure lack of shooting from Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and also kind of like the way that the NBA is played today is it's so based on kind of shooting and this like kind of ISO, like kind of with your best player, ISO or pick and roll with your best player, and then just floor spacers all around. And do you think that also contributes to why Philly just can't figure it out?
I think the biggest issue might very well just be personality. You know, it really does. When the two stars, I just feel like they might say that they're great friends, but I just don't think that's really the case. A, but B, you know, I put a stat up in one of my other videos recently where if you get outscored by 6 or more threes a game, and that for the last 5 or last 3 years, including the playoffs, the winning percentage, if you score more than six or more than the other team, you win. I don't know if anyone's on Twitter. It was like 85% of your games, maybe more. Okay.
Oh, so was that in the? Sorry, was that in the Thunder Rockets?
Yeah, and
it was like 129 and 3 or something, and then
it's 136 and 9. So whatever that is.
Like that.
But one of the 9 was the game I covered because they actually did it, and I tried to show how. Although I don't even know if that was successful. But it's so rare if you know. And by the way, even 5 years ago, that you had to make, I think, 9 more threes to have that winning percentage. So what's going on here is that three-pointers are more profound now. You cannot afford to get outscored that way in a series. Like maybe once you're going to sneak through and do some things and get some extra offensive rebounds or whatever. But so if you're going to if you want to contend for the title, you cannot have a team that's going to consistently get outscored from the three-point line. Now I have to check the Philly, you know, box scores. Maybe they're not getting outscored that much, but it feels like that would be the case because again they don't have enough of that elite shooting. Now again, if their defense is good enough where you can limit the three-point shots, then you have something, right? You know, you limit middle penetration, you don't help one pass away, and you're really disciplined about those things. You could, in theory, be a really bad three-point shooting team, but make the other team bad as well, and then now it's a fair fight. But you know, they keep backing up. You see, like, you know, closeouts used to be a thing where, okay, I'm on the block and I can close out to the three-point line in about, you know, 2 steps. Well, they're shooting 5 feet down the line now, and you can't get anywhere near them. And so that changes everything and opens it all up. And that's only going to increase. We're only going to see farther and farther three-point shooting and you know, more and more ineffective defense. So you're going to have to get on board and go the offensive route if you want to win.
Do you see that as kind of an issue for the Lakers too, and that's the way they have to solve it because they're not a great shooting team? And so do you think they just have their key to winning is just being able to limit the other team's three-pointers because their defense has been great? But
yeah, no, that's exactly what it has to be. I mean, you know, it's a good thing I should check. I haven't done a Lakers video in a while, and that's probably why I haven't had like a 1 million view video because those always do so well in a while. But I got to look at that, yeah, for sure, and explain that because that is their only hope because they're not going to suddenly get good at three-point shooting. You know, the only guy that can stroke it, I think, is J.R. Smith or you know Deion Waiters isn't the guy. I'm kind of curious. I want to look this up. I just got my new computer and B-Ball Ref does not come up automatically. Is it Basketball Reference?
Yeah, that's.
I don't even know what it is anymore. Kind of like how you don't know your own cell phone number or you don't know your parents' cell phone numbers. I'm just kind of curious. Let's look at this real quick because this will be interesting to see.
Share the screen.
So their 3-point percentage over the year. Oh yeah, so they actually shoot a higher percentage than their opponent a little bit, but their opponent is making 1.6. Oh no, that's percentage. Where's the actual per game? 11 and 11.6. So they've been able to keep it pretty even, where they're whatever they make is what the opponent makes. So they're okay, but again, it only gets harder when you're playing the playoffs, and these teams know how to exploit the defenses. Because remember, how do you get a good three? Is when you break the defense down and you get penetration, then you kick. Back in my day, when you got that penetration, you're just shooting it, or you're going to do a bounce pass for a layup. No one ever got into the air, near the dotted line and then fired it out to the corner. Like, that's insane. But that's actually the best, it's the great play. So that's what they have to contend with. So that's another reason why I would be worried about the Lakers.
Shout out my dad for this stat, but he told me one night, no team in the past 10 years has won a championship not being in the top 10 at three-point percentage, and the Lakers are in the bottom 10 in the league. So that is very concerning, especially since you saw the whole reason they lost in game one was their inability to shoot. And as soon as LeBron or AD would turn their back to the basket, which is where they're both probably the most dangerous, they would immediately flip to a 1-2-2 zone and then basically collapse the paint, and then they just can't shoot. If that's against the Clippers, who are definitely more dangerous offensively than the Blazers and can punish you for not scoring every single time, I think that's where the Lakers' main concern is. And I think the same thing as the Bucks. Middleton or, like you said, Bledsoe has not been shooting well in the playoffs against the Magic. So what are you going to see against Miami next round? Probably. And then even Toronto, who's probably even better defensively. So we'll see. Yeah,
it's a real problem. In fact, the other barometer you'd see is the top 10 in offensive rating and top 10 in defensive rating. It has to be like the cutoff. And the Lakers were 11th in offensive rating, which is interesting. LeBron is in decline. He's still a top 5 player, but he doesn't finish as well as he used to. He can make the three sometimes. I kind of want to really quickly check what he was over the course here. 35%. It's a little bit below average, but he's struggled there, and he's had a lot of struggles in the playoffs with that as well. They're going to just let him shoot it all day, and I don't think that's going to help him. If he keeps shooting those, then that's not going to win him the game. Anthony Davis was great, but he has this weird knack about destroying the Blazers, specifically where in the next rounds, whoever he has to play might not be so easy to do that. And in Portland, they're so broken down now and shorthanded. They came into the series shorthanded without Trevor Ariza and then, Zach Collins. So we're going to see a different Lakers team, I think, against a better opponent that has more bodies to throw at them.
I think – oh, you go.
So I just have two matchups that I want to ask you about. So do you think – do you have the Rockets beating the Thunder for the series?
Probably, because the Thunder, when they've won, it's been the most Herculean effort of all time, just to barely get it there. And eventually, I feel like that's going to wear out. Even though it's too bad, because I like that team, and they're not overmatched to the point where it's a done deal. They're going to lose in 6. But I feel like the Rockets are going to make it. Yeah.
And then my second one is, do you think that the Heat will beat the Bucks, or do you think the Bucks will take the Heat?
Okay, now here's the thing about this would be a good preview video, which I don't do too many because they become after a day no one watches them. But the Bucks have struggled defending the three-pointer, and I've shown at least 2 or 3 videos, maybe 4 across the last 2 seasons of why. And yet I scratch my head because they're like one of the all-time great defensive teams, even though they give up a ton of wide-open three-pointers, and the three-point percentage isn't it's okay. It's not amazing, but it's not, it's not terrible, but it's sort of okay. And considering the volume of open threes they give up, then this came out, and I've been trying to get Second Spectrum to give me some more information about it, because what else came out was this notion that, okay, the reason why they give up so many open threes is because they're really making sure that the only people taking those are the bad three-point shooters. Now, to me, that makes sense. Help one pass away off of these 3 guys, and help off of from the weak side. You really dare those guys to be open behind the 3 and shoot it. It doesn't seem that hard to me, but I talked to some NBA head coach or assistant coaches about it. And, in the regular season, the normal season, when it's you get a walkthrough before the game and you don't have a lot of time to prepare, it seemed to me that they were saying that it was a little bit too hard to make that adjustment, on the fly during the regular season. But obviously, in the playoffs, it would be. Now, my answer to that is, well, the Bucks seem to have figured it out, and it doesn't seem to be that hard. You have a meeting before the game. You have a meeting that, at 11 in the morning, and then, before the game, say, don't forget, let's where is it? Avery Bradley shoot. Actually, he's not so bad. Let Rajon Rondo shoot. Just sag off of him and dare him to shoot. So it shouldn't be that hard. So, and at the point being that, like, the Bucks, that might have been why the Bucks did that, and that's why they were effective. But man, if they're going to continue to play the kind of defense they do, there's not many people they can help off like that. And so, if that's the case, and they don't help off, then all of a sudden that wall that they keep putting up against the front of the rim, and people are having a hard time finishing there, well, all of a sudden Dragic would be getting in the lane and being able to lay it up. And gosh, who else is on that team? Jimmy Butler, because he's not going to want to shoot it too much. He's going to want to drive it. So if he's got Hero and Rob Robinson and Dragic spotting up, they're not going to be able to wall that off, and he'll be able to get to the basket. So it's a bad matchup, I think, for the Bucks. And certainly with Spoelstra, I would take Spoelstra over Budenholzer as well.
Kind of going back to a series we talked about a little bit ago, the Thunder Rockets series. I really do think if the Thunder make a simple adjustment in the amount of minutes they're giving Adams, I think they can actually pull it out. Because you see with Adams, he just doesn't have the foot speed to get out to the corner that PJ Tucker loves so much. And then once Harden or someone drives, he's just a terrible matchup, and he's not great enough offensively to take advantage of the height. So I think they, for a while, or when it really mattered, they played the three guards, Schroeder, Shea, and CP3, with Lou Dort guarding Harden, and then Gallo at the 5. I think that's giving the Rockets a little bit of their own medicine in the fact that they can space the floor a lot better. Dort isn't great, but he's better than Adams, obviously. So I think if they can maybe give Adams a better purpose offensively, more as a screener like they used to have him, I think they can maybe pull it out. But like you said, they did have to try really, really hard. So.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what I mentioned in the video I did on game 3 and with Adams, and he went from 32 minutes to the 27. They took the 5 minutes off, exactly was like I said they should do. And I mean, the only problem that the Thunder have is with Dort, because they're sagging off him so much, it becomes a thing, and then he's thinking about it. He hit 3 of them, I think, right? Or hit 2 or 3 of them in the game. At the end of the game 4 they won. Because we're 2-2 right now, right, with them? Yeah, it's 2-2.
Yeah, it's 2-2.
So in the game 4, he actually hit some of those, and so that changes the dynamic of things. And plus, what Dort is doing on the other side. Now, I did a video where I said he shut him down. Harden had 38 points in that game, but none of them were really against Dort, and that was the key. He really made him work when he did score. So it's a really intriguing series, especially when you have the whole Russell Westbrook and CP3 switching positions on teams. But you have to remember that Russell Westbrook's coming back tomorrow. And normally I would say, okay, he's going to have to blend in. This team's been playing, and they've kind of got a rhythm going. But he would never do that. Like Mike Conley blended in after he missed those games, and now they took off. Russell Westbrook is going to command exactly what he was getting before, and if not more, to kind of prove he's back. It'll probably be a little bit disruptive, but it'll also be beneficial because he's good. And that's the one X factor that we have to figure out. That's going to change the entire complexion of the series, and we have no idea. I have no idea. Honestly, I can't tell. I think it might be better for the Rockets, but I can't tell yet.
I think Nerlens Noel has an interesting role for this Thunder team too, when it comes to guarding in that corner, because he does have a lot more athleticism than Steven Adams.
Yeah, he does. But he's also more of a liability on offense than Steven Adams is even. So to take a trade-off. But yeah, he definitely has been moving well and active. But again, if you want to play those guys, then I kind of feel like, you have to see some more on the offensive end in terms of really punishing them on offensive putbacks. Adams a little bit, but I don't. My mind's eye is telling me that Nerlens Noel has not really done much on that end, and that's it's nice in the regular season that they can do some things, but you're talking about the playoffs when each game is crucial, and they can't afford empty minutes, and so that's why I would imagine Noel. He's probably, I don't know what he's getting, but he's not getting more than what, 18 minutes a game, I think, in the playoffs. I could check that real quick. And that's why, you know, he'll have limited minutes, and they're going to have to try and stretch it with, I like the Gallinari at 5. I think that would really help them against the Rockets. I got to check, has he been playing that as the 5 in the series?
Yeah,
no, but I've seen him. He has.
No, I think he has, yeah. At least in crunch time for sure.
Yeah.
I noticed, I'm like,
quarter.
where's Adams? And then he was just not on the court, and then Gallo was at the 5. Also, Gallo's like 6'10", so it's like not like he's like tiny.
No, he. By the way, Gallo is going to be. It would be a center in now or in a few more years. That's the center. But maybe even a skinnier. You know, doesn't have to be as tall. You can have a guy, as long as he can shoot a little bit and maybe pass a little bit. You can have a guy who's 6'8". Robert Covington will be the centers. I swear to God, we're going to have more Robert Covingtons playing that position going forward, and that'll be fine. I mean, look how they you know, the Rockets are doing it, and they're doing well that way. So that, and I think that everyone's going to end up doing it that way as well. Noel actually only plays 13 minutes a game, and that's what I thought. And that's the most you can play him in these series. He just doesn't have enough effect. I would have thought Muscala would have gotten a little more. It looks like he got 13 minutes. I think it was in the last game, because I don't think he had played at all before that. And he's the one guy because he can shoot a little bit from 3 and space that floor. But again, you can't have empty minutes in any position these days.
I have a question. Looking forward to the next round. Assuming that we'll have Raptors Celtics. That series has been kind of intriguing to me, because I have the Raptors in the final as well, because I think they can beat the Bucks. But I thought that the Celtics presented kind of, I don't know, just the way Jason Tatum's been playing. I think the Celtics are kind of like an interesting matchup. Do you have any take on that series?
Oh, it's going to be on. It's going to be an awesome series. It should go 7 games. It's going to be back and forth. And what you have here is that the game within the game is you have the matchups between Siakam and Anunoby have to go up against Brown and Tatum. And that's going to be the crux of the matter here. Now, Kemba Walker is, you know, and you have Kyle Lowry. It's another really intriguing matchup. And then you have Fred VanVleet. Gosh, who's this? I guess if Brown plays as shooting guard. Oh, what's their lineup now? Because I forgot.
They either have Brown at the 2 and Hayward at the 3, or they
but Hayward's injured.
Yeah, or they have Smart at the 2 and then Brown at the 3, Tatum at the 4.
Okay. If Smart starts, then I think the Celtics are going to lose. I think if they have to put that much pressure on him, he has to play that many minutes. I think that's okay. So Marcus Smart, that's the guy I was talking about. A guy who really hustles on defense, and like coaches you should love him, right? No, it drives me insane to watch him play because of his decision making as well. And it was funny because I was watching with my wife, and she doesn't know anything about basketball, but for some reason it was on, whatever. And he made a really good move. I'm like, okay, now watch. He's going to make 2 really bad moves in the next few minutes because of that good move. And sure enough, he threw the ball in the stands, and then he like fell over or whatever. And she's like laughing. It was almost like I could predict the future, but I just know him, watching him long enough. So that's going to be the problem, and that's what Hayward really hurts them, his absence. So if that's the case, and they have to play Marcus Smart 30 minutes a game, I'm going with the Raptors anyway, probably. But that might be Raptors in 6 instead of 7.
So we like to do stuff about like culture and music and all that. And so this is a little segue into another topic. Music is just so vital for the NBA right now. Like you see guys like Dame Dollar and like all these people like being really big in the music industry. And beside that, every player has a role with music in some way. They all talk about it. It's like obviously a big thing. How do you think that's changed the culture of the NBA? And
well, I don't know if it's changed. I think what you described has always been that way, right? I mean, always. And music is a really central focus to when you're training. And I will say that like it seems like the coaches have sort of tapped into this a little bit, where like they'll play whatever the players are listening to in their practices a little bit, you know. Now the problem is they're not doing it at the right times, in my opinion. So I would have been an old school coach who was like, no, it's like, this is a cathedral. You cannot have music, whatever. But I think what I discovered is that the players play their best when they're playing with rhythm And because think about it, like if you ever played basketball and like, you know, the best day you have when you're shooting as well as you have, you probably have your favorite song in your head. You're kind of singing along to it and you feel loose and you feel bouncy, not like a coach who's screaming and yelling at you every single time and you're tense. And it's like, you know, you could probably perform that way, but it's not what you had when you had those moments where you're like, I cannot miss a shot. Nothing bothers me. You call a foul on me, whatever, let's check it up. You know what I mean? Those are the moments you want to tap into. And I do feel like music could be a really good channel for that. And so if I were to coach like a high school team again, I would be playing music during the scrimmages. I would be playing music as much as possible, not just like, oh, when they warm up, it's like to, you know, to appease some players. Look, I'm cool, I'm playing your music. No, I would make sure to try and tap into that because I want them to feel that. And if I have to, you know, it's so easy now, you can press pause on your phone and then you can talk and then get the music going again. Back in the day, that was a little bit harder because, you know, you might have had like a boom box in the corner and you had to like somehow walk over there and stop. It was too hard to do. And now with that kind of control. So that kind of doesn't necessarily address, you know, the cultural part of like what music means, but I do feel like at the very least, as far as the training goes, we need more of that. But it is fascinating how, you know, social media has sort of cross-pollinated all these different things, and people can now have these different lives as different, you know, as singers or rappers or whatever they want to do, and build that brand. It really is amazing, and it'll also, you know, permeate into politics. The next great politician will probably be a YouTuber, right, or an Instagram person. I'm like convinced that somehow that'll be their start, and that'll be really smart because they'll end up having saved all that money. What you normally would have to do is to spend to like PR people and all that garbage. And you can organically build a following and a brand and then, you know, take that wherever you want to go. So it's kind of exciting in that way. And I think that's what you're saying. I think that, you know, players are now realizing that that's another avenue they can use towards expressing themselves. It's great.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I actually think that we are almost at our time limit. Is there anything like that you'd like to say to anyone that's watching or any of us can say? So yeah, as an outro.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it's a really strange time. I think, you know, we just went through the season was on the brink, right? They could have canceled the season and not had the rest of the playoffs. And so it's an interesting time because what they did for those, you know, these 2 days of boycotting or striking or whatever you want to call it, you know, calls attention to some really important issues in a way that when I was your age, we probably, you know, didn't really think about them as much. Even though I grew up in Chicago and right in the middle of the city and stuff was going on all around me as well, and we were aware of it. So it's kind of an interesting time. Then you throw on COVID on top of that, that it's just like, this is, you know, 25, 35 years from now, you know, your kids are going to ask you about this. And they're going to say, what was that time like? How it must have been just insane. And I don't know what it feels like now, but it's certainly just a crazy, crazy time. And I think we're all going to need time to sort of step back from this and have time to understand what we just went through, and then hopefully it gets better. So anyway, I don't know. I think it's what a strange time what we're living in, and a very unique time in our culture. And there's two ways it can go. It can get better or it can get a lot worse. And we'll have to wait and see what happens in November. But, you know, to be able to at least sit here and talk about this stuff and maybe even distract ourselves is really an important thing for everybody.
All right. Well, all of Coach Nick's socials, YouTube channel will be down in the description. You guys can check out his channel. That he posts some great stuff, as we've mentioned. It's been really fun talking with you. Thank you for coming on. You're welcome anytime. And thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks.